Welcome to this second module where we talk about how to tell your business story. I want to introduce you to two models that we use in communication. The first is the AIM model, where we talk about the audience, the reason or the objective for this communication, and finally, what is the message that we hope to convey. The second framework talks about the 3 C's of business storytelling. This includes the content, it includes the construction, and it includes the communication. Let me delve a little bit into this framework. It was very important for you when you write your own brand stories. Your story needs content, right? That is a given. But it also needs this content to be constructed in a way which is logical and is understandable by your audience. You're not writing the story for yourself, you're writing it for your audience to comprehend. And finally, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to be able to communicate whatever you want to say with passion to catch the interest of your audience. So let's look at the 8 steps for business storytelling. In step 1, we talk about your story needing substance. You need to be very clear about your why. And I'd like you to watch this video by someone I greatly admire called Simon Sinek. This is his most famous TEDx talk, where he describes that consumers buy the why and not the what and the how, which are the much easier ways to communicate. We're very comfortable with talking about the what we do and how we do it. We're very uncomfortable most times talking about why we do it. But people do buy the why rather than the what and the how. Simon uses Apple very extensively as an example in this video. And he always talks about how Apple communicates the why so clearly, which is why we are happy to buy any product of Apple, be it a phone or a laptop. I've taken a little liberty with this golden circle of Sinek and created a structure within which you build your presentation, which includes the why you do it, the what you do, and how you're better than competition. In the next step, you need to analyze and do a little bit of introspection about your product. What is the kind of stories that you can tell about your product? Is your product conducive to emotional stories or more logical stories, or a combination of the two? And this is something you must be very clear about, because some products, particularly in the B2B space or commodities, do not lend themselves to very emotional stories. In fact, it becomes a force fit and is actually detrimental to the brand. So you need to be very clear about the kind of stories that you can tell about your brand. The SWOT analysis is still a very powerful tool that you can use to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to your brand. I'm also recommending that you do a SWOT analysis of yourself as a person and revisit it every quarter to find out whether you have negated some of the threats, have you improved upon your weaknesses, and you are aware of what is going on around you. Step 3 requires you to answer a very, very fundamental question. What's in it for me? And me here is not you, but your consumer. So in your pitch or in your communication or in your advertising, whatever it is, you need to fundamentally answer why your consumer should look at it. What is in it for them that you are providing, which makes you different from competition. And this takes me to the value proposition, which is the source of this story. We have discussed this extensively in Module 1, so I'm not going to go back into it, but I want you to understand how important the value proposition is in building your story. In the next step, we talk about ingredients. Just like when you cook, your dish needs the right ingredients. Telling a business story requires the right ingredients. I will get into this in a little more detail when we do our workshops, because this is something that needs to be explained face to face. But just understand that you have a mission, you have characters, you have opportunities, you have obstacles, and finally you have victory. Right? So these are the major characters or elements of any business story, and it does good for anybody if you pick this up and incorporate it in the story that you want to tell. In the next step, look at plots. Again, I will get into this in detail during my workshop. But what you need to understand is people, when they buy stories, need a plot. So you need either a tragedy or a comedy or a journey or a combination thereof. I would recommend you to be very careful when you're using comedy, because a lot of us are not funny by nature. And there's nothing worse than starting a story with a joke at which nobody laughs. It kind of falls flat. Similarly, with tragedy, don't tell them about the dire consequences of not buying your product. That tends to put people off. So you need to have a very judicious mix of these elements when you're building your own story. Step 6, your story needs a structure, because this story is not about you, it is about your audience. And unless you have a very clear structure, you will lose your audience because they need to understand your story. So what I present here is a chart which talks about main points, supporting points, and sub-points. And the detail that you can get into depends upon the time that you have available to you. So if you have, say, 6 minutes to tell your story, you possibly can't have more than one main point and maybe 2 sub-points. So this is a very flexible structure, but you definitely need a structure when you are telling your story. So we are talking about building a basic corporate deck here, which you can use for all occasions, right? So this is a structure on which we have built a template that you can use. My advice to you is, while this is your corporate slide deck, and this is the structure we followed in the pitch deck, which I will share with you, you actually need to build a library of slides and preserve them so that you can change the portions that are relevant to your audience. For example, if you're talking to an investor or a VC, you may have much more focus on your financials. And if you're talking to, say, the media, it would be of more interest to them to get a human interest story. Now, while the structure of your story remains same, please don't change that. The flavor could vary from audience to audience. One of the important things that we forget is, does my story work? Does my consumer understand? Does the audience understand what I'm trying to say to them? One of the things I do is, after I've written a presentation, I put it aside for a few hours, and then I go back to it with a fresh set of eyes and look at it from the audience perspective rather than my own. And I think this discipline makes a lot of sense because then you get very objective about your presentation rather than being completely subjective about it. The last step talks about a plan of action for your story. Now, once you built this story, what do you do with it? right? You need to broadcast it, you need to amplify it, and you need to have a value. The story needs to deliver a certain value. In today's world, that value is measured not just by the number of leads you get, but by the number of conversions. The power of the story is in the number of conversions it brings you. For example, if you're making a pitch to an investor, does the investor actually invest in you? That would be an ROI. When you're making a pitch to say a set of interns whom you want to join your organization, do they actually join? That's ROI. So please remember that every piece of content that you develop must give you enough returns in terms of whatever the objectives it was supposed to meet, particularly in terms of conversions. Once you create an interesting piece of content, please use it across multiple platforms so that it ensures ROI. Please remember that you're going to spend a lot of time and money on building your content. And you need to ensure that you get maximum returns from it in terms of not just generating leads, but converting those leads through a concentrated effort. The way you can do this is to build what is called a content calendar, which is part strategic and part tactical, and follow that across your communication program. I picked up this very interesting infographic from an organization called the Mobile Monkey, where they have provided a whole bunch of social media calendar ideas. And I thought I'd share that with you, including the link so you can use it if you need to build your own social media calendars. With that, we come to the end of this module, and I like to introduce you to the assignment that you need to complete and upload on the prescribed platform. You had already written details of your company in a short document last time. And what I want you to do now is to build your value prop. You won't get it right the first time, that's for sure. But please use the 4 buckets that I have given you and build your value proposition accordingly. So you have your customer, you have the pain point, you have your solution, and you have your competitive advantage. Please weave the 4 together in one sentence and then practice saying it aloud in 30 seconds. And this is the discipline of the value proposition. Once you have done this, please evaluate it. I want you to actually write it down on a bit of paper so that it is very clear, and you will understand as you do that how you can keep fine-tuning it. Once you have built the value proposition, please take a few minutes to evaluate it and see if it meets all the criteria. So thank you for your time and looking forward to your assignments.